Hello and welcome to The Stack. This week I speak with Puck's Lauren Sherman on the new head of editorial for US Vogue and other print news, plus a beautiful travel title from Japan based on Yakushima Island. And we find out more about the newspaper club. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show speaking with Lauren Sherman, the excellent fashion journalist at Puck, the media company where you find out the inside news from Wall Street, Washington, and Hollywood, of course. Lauren is great at looking at the state of fashion in print, and this week she tells me more about her job at Puck and what she thinks of the new head of editorial for US Vogue, Chloe Mal.
I scooped that Chloe Mal was the new head of editorial content at US Vogue, effectively replacing Anna Wintour as the person who runs American Vogue on a daily basis.
Before we talk more about this news itself, let's talk about Puck. And one of the reasons why I love Puck so much, I love reading you, is it kind of makes me feel I'm an insider, if you know what I mean. There's kind of a slightly chatty way that you and the other columnists do that as well. How does it feel? How does it compare being at Puck compared to your previous jobs as a fashion journalist?
You know, I think when I started out in journalism, there was this idea. My first big job was at Forbes. I was a reporter there covering sort of anything that had to do with what wealthy people were buying, and a lot of fashion. It's always been the thing I wanted to write about. And when I worked there in the early days, it was very much, they had a way of saying no inside baseball. So don't go too in the weeds because a generalist reader won't be interested in that. And I think what the sort of internet revolution, blogging, you always have to have an angle thing that happened in the 2010s changed that, where the consumer is really knowledgeable and they want to be on the inside. And so I feel like in my career, I've sort of been working towards that. And Puck is a culmination of that, where we're going on the inside. It's quick, it's iterative, it's very internet-y, but it is also written in a way that, you know, I have editors, I have a team that supports it feels like taking the best of the world of print and bringing it to a distribution platform that is the way people consume content today. So I feel really lucky. It feels like my entire career has been sort of building up to this, because I've always thought the inner workings of the fashion industry are so fascinating. Kathy Horn, the great fashion critic, I remember reading something once where she said it's like peeling an onion. You're never at the center. There's always more information, and it's so true. And I feel really lucky to be able to peel one layer of that onion in my column.
And, you know, talking about the fashion world, I mean, I don't know, in the last 1 or let's say 2 years, there's been so many breaking news stories. I mean, it's a never-ending selection of there's a new designer here, another person retired, and including the story of Vogue as well, in a way.
Yeah, for sure. It's been very interesting to cover the sort of transformation of legacy media in the US, especially Condé Nast, which is so fascinating to so many people. And that paralleling with the rise of the luxury industry and the consolidation of the luxury industry, and how that sort of, those two things paralleled, and there was a push-pull against them. And there's just been so much change and so much a lot of fraught as well. And so it's been really fun to be able to do that, because at Puck, we are so iterative. Every little thing I've been able to report on. And when I zoom out and see how much the industry has changed in the last 2 years, it's really remarkable.
It is remarkable. How do you feel about print? Because at the same time that there's been some difficulties, in the US, of course, the number of readers is declining, the print, but, it still kind of matters, right? And I think even writing about it, I love when you talk about Condé Nast. I love to know the behind the scenes as a print lover. But what's your view on print? There's still a space for it in a way, right?
Certainly, and there's still an interest from advertisers. I just did an interview with Carly Kloss, who bought the UK magazine ID a few years ago, and she said one of the biggest surprises for her has been how much interest there is in buying print. And I think advertisers, their budgets may be shrinking in terms of what they allocate to traditional media, but they can be a little more creative with where they put those dollars. And so, yeah, I think the return on investment for advertising in a print magazine that has a really engaged reader is very high. It's just a matter of knowing what you want. You're not going to be able to see conversion or click-through rate the way you do online, but the sort of intangible value in it is still there. I think the challenge for print is there are not as many people trained in that kind of work. And so the quality of the content is maybe really varied. So you might have a magazine that has great images, but the words aren't fabulous. Or you might have a really, great editor, but not a good visuals person. So when you can get the sort of intersection, I think of W Magazine, Interview, The Gentlewoman, Monocle as magazines that, are really fun to read and look at. That is the key now, because advertisers don't have to advertise in Vogue if they don't want to.
That's true. And do you think, of course, Chloe Mal has been selected as the head of editorial content for US Vogue, not editor-in-chief. That's quite a difference. But do you sense there could be an opportunity for Vogue here, American Vogue? Because sure, there's been so many issues, but, people love to talk about it. There's still kind of this image, this kind of, oh my God, is US Vogue. But what do you feel? What do you think she should do to be a successful, not editor, head of editorial content?
Head of editorial content.
It's difficult to say.
I believe someday Condé Nast will walk back this decision to use
this
silly title. It's so silly. It's just
agreed.
Just call them editors-in-chiefs. Anyway, look, I think there are two things. One is that Vogue is arguably the biggest fashion brand in the world. I always say it's Chanel and Vogue. They, in terms of people knowing what it is, people having a feeling, affinity towards it, people interacting with it, everyone knows about Vogue. And so, and credit to Anna Wintour for making it a global brand in some ways. I think the challenge is that there are many types of gatekeepers today, and there is also direct access to brands. So the authority part is harder to define. And I often refer to American GQ, run by global head of editorial content, Will Welch, as a good example of what a modern mass magazine can be. Look, the circulation rate, who cares? Newsstand sales, who cares? These used to be the things that they measured against. But what Will did when he came into GQ, American GQ was sort of an everyman's magazine. It was, how do American men want to dress? And we also do good journalism. Esquire, similar, and I think Esquire has also, under Michael Sebastian, done a similarly good job of creating what it needs to be, which is a niche. Like, we live in a world of a mass of niches. Like, what Will did when he came into GQ was he decided, I'm not going to do investigative reports anymore. Maybe occasionally, this is going to be a magazine for fashion enthusiasts, and we're going to just go hard on that. And everything he does, from the events to which, have been very, very successful. He has this fashion show at the Super Bowl. They do a creativity awards. All of the events have been really successful. And the magazine itself, the people there, there's a cult around the magazine. It is never going to be the everyman's magazine anymore because there's no longer an everyman. And I think Esquire, what Michael has done is he's obviously they still have fashion pages and they have a really amazing longtime fashion director, creative director, but he's really focused on the journalism and they've won ASMEs and a Pulitzer Prize. I think it was Esquire's first Pulitzer Prize. So he decided this is what I'm good at and we're going to focus. And I think what Chloe needs to do is, she's a very funny person. If you ask anyone, what would you say about Chloe Mall? You would say she has a great sense of humor. I think it'll be interesting to me to see how a writer, she's an editor, but the reality of it is that she's truly a writer and a journalist. So let's see what she does, what kind of visuals people she brings on, what kind of sort of vision she has for it. But she said in the New York Times that she wants the magazine in some ways to be smaller. And I actually think that that is the right way to think about it. It's about focus in this market. And so I do think there is an opportunity. The challenge for Condé Nast is to balance making something feel specific that can be sold universally. So the Vogue business could be much bigger than it is. They need to figure out how to scale it given the awareness and the understanding of the brand globally.
I think the brands, especially in print, they need to feel special as well. And I think that's what's missing. But for example, changing the title to Vanity Fair, let's say, they have also a new editor. I'm kind of having hopes the Vanity Fair kind of comes back, perhaps with a little bit more glamour of the old age. I wonder, what's your take on that?
I 100% agree. I think, as I wrote in my column on Chloe, that Mark Guiducci, the editor of Vanity Fair, and Chloe Mall, the new editor of Vogue, have, when you look at them, it's sort of a similar background. They both worked for Anna for a long time. They come from great privilege. They were sort of waiting in the wings for this job and they got it. But Mark's remit is so different from Chloe's. Chloe needs to sort of manage the relationships and make sure people are still excited about Vogue. Mark needs to bring people who deserted Vanity Fair back. And so I'm really excited for his Vanity Fair. I think he really wanted the job. He's wanted it since he was, I think, in college. That was his dream job. And he is determined to do something interesting with it. So let's see what the product looks like. But I think generally people are just excited the challenge with Vanity Fair in the last few years is not that there wasn't a lot of good work happening there. It was that they weren't a part of the conversation anymore. And it seemed as though they had chosen to not be in the conversation. And I think Mark's goal is to be in the conversation. So whether or not he can execute remains to be seen. But I think there's like a lot of goodwill and also excitement around what he's trying to do. There was reports a few weeks back, my colleague Dylan Byers touched on this too, that he is interested in having Melania Trump on the cover. Look, is that going to actually happen? I have no idea. But the fact that he is even saying that to people is provocative. And so I think we are all looking for something a little provocative at this moment.
That's super interesting. And Lauren, finally, we kind of have to mention, of course, we had the Giorgio Armani sadly passing away. That's huge, huge fashion story. I know he was 91, but I was so shocked when I read it, What an icon.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Look, it comes for all of us, right? But yeah, I think I just was trying to gather my thoughts on it. And, I'm a business reporter, so eventually I will write about sort of succession and what may happen to the company now that he has passed. He had quite a few guardrails in place so that the company and his family and his employees will be protected. But I assume there will be another chapter, in a year or two, whatever that ends up meaning. But I was thinking about him today. He really did fundamentally change the way people dress. And also, if you think about the Gap in the 1980s, that doesn't exist without Armani. There's so much that his influence was so great, and not just regarding the color navy. But I also think a really good lesson from him in his life was, A, he lived his life really honestly and straightforward, but B, he didn't start his business until he was in his 40s. And so, I just think it's a good lesson for people who we live in a time of everybody wants everything to happen really quickly and instantly, and patience is a virtue.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and you can subscribe to Puck. Just go to puck.news. In Japan, a nation of magazines, you can find local independent publications in every corner of the archipelago. Among them, we turn our attention to Saunter Magazine, based on the small island of Yakushima. Monocle's Ryuma Takahashi spoke with the magazine's founding editor.
Yakushima, the island located about 60 kilometers of Kyushu, Japan, blessed with such rich nature that it's called the Alps of the ocean. This natural beauty has earned it recognition as a UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site. This island also has traditions like mountain worship and ancient dances that has continued for generations, making it rich in both historical and cultural attractions. There is an independent magazine published from Yakushima. Saunter Magazine, published by Kilty Books, is a bilingual travel magazine. I spoke with Shinji Kunimoto, the founding editor-in-chief of Saunter Magazine.
This is a travel magazine published by a Yakushima-based publisher. People often introduce it as a magazine about Yakushima. That's not quite right. We're a travel documentary magazine. But yes, each issue has its own theme, and we incorporate something related to Yakushima based on that theme.
As he explained, Saunter Magazine travels the world from Yakushima, following the future theme of each issue. The latest issue, Volume 8, is titled Textile Tales, and explores India and Yakushima through the lens of textiles. Opening the high-quality cover with the special printing processes, readers can enjoy immersive photographs of travel scenes and Yakushima's nature alongside travel essays.
I used to read international magazines like Serial Magazine and Germany's Rucksack Magazine. For the documentary element, our magazine's expression, I was definitely conscious of National Geographic in that regard. I think everyone in the publishing industry knows this. Most people don't really read the text properly. Independent magazines often have a lot of text, and since every possible magazine expression technique has been exhausted, I thought it would be better to present beautiful photographs for differentiation.
The magazine is edited by Kunimoto, who is also a traveler himself, having moved to Yakushima after working as a magazine editor in Tokyo and Osaka. Just as he fell in love in Yakushima, distinguished contributors who became interested in this island make the magazine even more appealing. Famous Japanese musicians, celebrities, and legendary writers contribute essays or give interviews for each issue.
One of our magazine's distinctive features is the prestigious names of our contributors. I think they agreed to interviews because we're a Yakushima-based media. Many people give Yakushima special treatment, which is an advantage for us. However, there are some dilemmas about whether to seek the magazine's identity itself in Yakushima. Because there are local publications all across Japan, but local readers probably don't seek local content that introduces their own city. But with a special place like Yakushima, many readers do expect that from us. For example, Okinawan publishers often feature Okinawa-related content. Similarly, I've realized that operating from Yakushima, we're often expected to do the same.
But reading this magazine, you can feel his deep love for Yakushima. As this magazine travels to different places from its Yakushima base, you discover new aspects of the island, not just its nature, but its rich and diverse cultures. The sixth issue, titled Yakushima 2023, even includes a CD of music by composer Kaori Inoue that incorporates Yakushima's natural sounds. The music you're listening to right now is from that collection. Also, the seventh issue, titled Mountains, Forests and Trails, features poet Sansei Yamao, who traveled around the world from Yakushima, exploring his philosophy of Yakushima's forests and animistic worldview. I think this is a magazine that could only be realized by Kunimoto, who lives in Yakushima, running this publishing house on his own. However, he said there are also struggles unique to independent magazines.
Recently, paper printing costs have gone up tremendously. It feels like about 1.5 times what it used to be. Because of that, I don't think almost anyone making independent magazines is actually profitable. Also, basically, I do the editing alone, plus sales, accounting, and various other tasks, so I don't write myself. I leave that to others. But I think about 90% of independent magazine editors want to write. What you might call the artist-type editor, independent magazine production might not suit such people. People with organizational skills or genius types who have such partners. Without that, I think independent magazine management is difficult.
Despite these harsh conditions surrounding independent magazines, Saunter Magazine, unlike other independent magazines, features many high-quality advertisements. I believe these efforts beyond writing are what elevate this magazine's quality.
Also, what's different about me compared to others is that I include many more advertisements in the magazine than other independent magazines. I decide release dates well in advance and don't delay them. But I don't think many people can commit to our approach with independent magazines. Most independent magazines publish new issues whenever they're ready. With this approach, you have to give up on advertising. Independent magazines cost money, so everyone pursues what they want to do. However, I think almost everything in the world has deadlines, and it's important to achieve high quality within those deadlines.
Finally, Kunimoto shared his thoughts about the joy of creating independent magazines.
What's amazing about media is that if you follow the proper steps, you can interview people you admire. Even with this small media outlet run by one person, if you follow the steps, you can do that. It's addictive. I think everyone who runs independent magazines loves that. In my case, I bear all the risks alone, and it's not like this makes me more profitable either. But somehow I'm able to do this. I can do what I love, and I want to continue as long as I can.
Thank you very much, Ryoma. Very interesting title there. It's called Saunter. And now let's talk newspapers, more specifically newspaper printing. Started in 2009, Newspaper Club was created to facilitate the process of making a newspaper. Now they've printed over 40 million of them and counting, and they ship all over the world. They have 3 different formats, mini, tabloid and broadsheet, with new formats to come. It was a pleasure to welcome to our studio Sarah Belfort, Brand and Communication Manager for Newspaper Club.
So I've been with Newspaper Club for 12 years, and I've never been very good at succinctly explaining what we do. I normally tell people, Newspaper Club prints newspapers, but not newspapery newspapers. So I thought if I'm going to be on this podcast, I should come up with something better than that. So I think I would say Newspaper Club makes it possible for anyone to print a newspaper, no matter how many copies you need, no matter how much or how little design experience you have. Our goal is to make newspaper printing accessible to everyone.
From a wedding to a brand that perhaps want to show off their products and have their own special mini newspaper as well.
Yeah, our customers, we have a huge range of customers. So we work with brands New Balance and Adobe printed with us recently for events and campaigns. And then we also print birthday newspapers. We print student portfolios. We print for weddings.
You know what?
So much more than that.
For a wedding, I was reading, I didn't know you guys do something for a wedding. If I ever get married, I'm going to hire your services.
Please do. We would love to print a newspaper for your wedding.
If you don't mind telling us a bit about the logistics. I know you're based in London, but the printing itself happens in Glasgow, right?
No, the printing actually happens in Peterborough. So
okay.
Newspaper Club, the company, is based in Glasgow. So our customer support team, our CEO, our CMO, they're all in Glasgow. But the printing itself happens in Peterborough, which is about an hour outside of London.
And your clients are all over the UK, or do you have a particular focus perhaps in London as well, which I presume would be a big market for you?
It is a huge market, but our customers are all over the world. So we have a lot of customers in the US. Our customers tend to come from cities that have more of a design culture, design scene. So cities that have art schools, or cities like New York is obviously a big one. We send lots of newspapers to New York, to Los Angeles, to London, but also to Manchester, to Birmingham Design Festival. And anywhere where there's people that are interested in design, we send newspapers.
That's amazing. Before we talk to you a bit more about Newspaper Club, you also kind of released your very first newspaper. That's exciting. After 15 years, is that the first one, right?
It is. Remarkably, it is. So we've printed over 40 million newspapers since we started in 2009. And we've seen so many brilliant and creative uses for the format, and we thought it was high time that we collected some of those stories in a newspaper of our own. We've wanted to make one for years, and it's something that has just always been put on the back burner. But last summer, we hired our very first CMO, Kay Symington, and she's come from a background of running her own agency and working with Kickstarter on partnerships. So she brings a lot of storytelling and brand building experience. And the first thing she said when she started was, we've got to make our own newspaper. So we did. And it's been a really fun way to think about our own content in a different way, putting it in a newsprint format, and to kind of kick off working with Kay.
Tell me some of the highlights. What can we see in the newspaper?
It's a bunch of interviews with people who have printed with us over the years. So there's all sorts of different projects. We really wanted to highlight the versatility of newsprint as a format, that it can do so much more than just report breaking news. So there's an interview with Holly Chapman, who's the head of brand at Papier. They have a really passionate community around their brand, and she talks about how they use print to support that. I chatted with Rupert Morrison, who is the founder of Drift Record Shop in Totnes.
Which I've been to, I have to say. Yes. Beautiful
Well,
shop.
have you seen his mini newspaper, Deluxe?
No, it's been a long time ago, but I love the shop.
Yeah, it's a brilliant shop, and it's a brilliant newspaper. It's actually our longest running mini newspaper. We've been printing it for over 12 years. So we talked to him about how he uses it to help the shop have more authority in the music industry. It's given him an opportunity to meet musicians that he otherwise wouldn't have had an excuse to talk to. We also talk with an in-house designer at Cubits about how they put their newspaper, The Spectacle, together. There's an interview with a typographer, Trey Seals, about an exhibition. They used our broadsheets for an exhibition at the Museum of Design in Atlanta. We talked to a lecturer at Edinburgh College of Art about using newspapers as a teaching tool. We print with lots of students. Every time degree show season comes around, we see some really brilliant student work in newspapers. And we worked with Glasgow-based illustrator Olivia Jewett on a big pull-out poster in the center, which people can hang up and hopefully remind them to do something creative with newsprint. And I should mention that we worked with Ewan Gallagher, who is our longtime collaborator at D8 Studio, on the design of the newspaper, which we launched at News and Coffee just outside Holborn Station with a newsstand and a coffee takeover.
That's fantastic. Well, I look forward for the printing press issue 2.
Yes, we can't wait next year.
And Sarah, okay, newspapers. Why now? So tell us about the appeal, because I do feel that more and more brands want to have their own newspapers, which is super exciting, but tell us more why.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling overwhelmed by the constant demands of our attention from devices. And a newspaper really slows things down. It's self-contained, it's physical, it doesn't recommend 5 more things for you to click on after you read it. And it makes space for playfulness in a way that I think is harder and harder to come across online. So much of content that people are creating online is driven by algorithms and SEO. And we hear from our customers that making a newspaper has liberated them from that. They can be more creative. They can be more experimental. They can put something in print that they maybe wouldn't want to exist online forever. We're also seeing lots of people that have really strong online presences who, write Substack newsletters. They're turning to newsprint as a way to bring that community offline. So we printed a newspaper for the cookbook author Alison Roman. Every year she publishes online a kind of Thanksgiving special, and she put that into print, and the copies just flew off the shelves. We've seen people celebrate milestones. They've published their 100th online newsletter, and so they'll print a newspaper to celebrate that and have an event that's an excuse to bring people together in one room and be in person, which I think is something people are craving more and more. Newspapers also have a sense of timelessness. There's a ritual to them. It takes two hands to read them. You're not going to be able to scroll through your phone while you're reading a newspaper. They demand your full attention. There's a wholesomeness to it, and there's I have a kid. I try to avoid being on my phone around him, but I don't feel bad if I'm reading a newspaper in front of him. It's an experience that can be shared, and there's a warmth, a tactility, and a physical experience to newsprint that I think makes it timeless, but also makes it very relevant for right now.
And it's amazing that your clients, as you said, anyone can have their own newspaper, but you do work with big brands, smaller brands. It's really like an open for everyone brand, right? Newspaper Club.
Yeah, that's our goal, is to make it accessible to everyone. When the company started in 2009, the newspaper printing industry was and still is quite old-fashioned. It's set up for regular publishers printing huge runs. And it wasn't easy or practical or affordable for someone that just had a one-off or a small project.
Sarah, one interesting thing, I was looking at your website, you do newspapers in different formats. There's broadsheet, tabloid, and mini. So tell us a bit more. That's very exciting because I think every format has its own advantages as well, right?
Yeah, there's different uses for all three formats. So we see people printing kind of catalogs, event programs, zines on our mini format. Our tabloid is great for a more traditional newspaper feel. We see a lot of wedding newspapers printed and also zines and lookbooks for brands. Our broadsheet is good if you want to make a big impression. So those have been really popular for large format imagery. Last year, the big trend was to use them on social media. So we had people announcing new products with a big broadsheet that they'd share the image of. And we are actually launching our first new product in, I think, 10 years.
That's amazing. And I have actually an example right in front of me.
Yes, so that is our brand new shiny midi, which is a size between our mini and our tabloid. So we're sort of just starting to send them out to customers to get feedback on how they think they'll use it. We are imagining it's going to be popular for more magazine-style publications where you want a bit more breathing room to tell longer-form storytelling.
I love the format, actually. I have a feeling media is going to do very well. One thing I want to ask, Sarah, I think you mentioned briefly, but can you tell us some of the brands that have been looking out for you as well, or some of the more recent newspapers that you guys published?
Yeah, so we've been printing a regular publication for Qubits that they keep in all their shops, which you may have seen. That's on our mini format. They have a really creative marketing team, and they're always coming across interesting things that they thought, we should do something with this. We're interested in it. Our customers are probably interested in it too. So they've been printing that with us for, I think, 6 years now. We print for lots of beauty brands. We've printed for Rhode Beauty, R.E.M. Beauty, Ariana Grande's beauty brand. And we actually just printed 3 newspapers for the Lionesses, which was really fun for us. They were giving them out at fan events during the tournament. So that was really cool.
That's an amazing selection. But you know what? I'm curious about the wedding. Are you guys going to do my wedding one?
Oh, we would love to. What format will you use?
You know what?
You're going to go big and bold with a broadsheet?
I'm a broadsheet guy. Even the newspapers I read traditionally, like the Financial Times, I like the broadsheets, So I don't know. I think, as you said, last year was on trend, right? On social media.
Yeah, definitely. They're still really, really popular.
That's fantastic. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for all you do, because I think it's very important to have a place like Newspaper Club. Because as you say, it's been challenging sometimes to find out where can you actually print stuff, especially in the UK. So it's amazing the work you guys do there.
Thank you so much for having me. And if anyone's thinking of printing a newspaper, we would love to help you. Newspaperclub.com. It's all online. You can find all of our prices, upload your file. We have an automatic system that checks everything and a very friendly and fast customer support team. If you are intimidated at all about printing a newspaper, we are here to help.
Thank you very much, Sarah. For more information, go to newspaperclub.com. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Jack Dewars. Any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fb@monocle.com. And remember, we're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. Meanwhile, you can always listen again at monocle.com or subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.